May 13th, 1918. I'm either coming out of this war a big man or in a wooden kimono. I know I can fight, I know I can fly, and I ought to be able to shoot straight. If I can just learn to do all three things at once, they can't stop me.
Warbirds, Diary of an Unknown Aviator, published in 1926 as a serial in Liberty magazine, then as a best-selling book, is by all accounts the most accurate and wrenching portrayal ever written about aviation in World War I. It tells the story of three American flyers whose exploits had earned them the nickname the Three Musketeers.
Men who had experienced the inexpressible felt some desperate need to express it. Sometimes out of homage to dead comrades, sometimes out of that peculiar mentality of the survivor, but often I think because they had lived at such a pitch of intensity that they could recall every moment, every detail, and some sense that they had already experienced the most momentous and significant portion of their lives.
In England, T.E. Lawrence, one of the most famous wartime heroes, called the diary immortal. The London Observer found it entirely a masterpiece. According to the Daily Express, it was the finest book on the war that has yet appeared.
The story starts out in a way that seems almost familiar and then quickly into a kind of bitterness about the futility of war and of World War I specifically that one finds in some of the other great classics of disillusionment. Much closer to Robert Graves and Siegfried Sassoon than he is to Rupert Brooke or Eddie Rickenbacker.
In America, the book's success inspired dozens of Hollywood films portraying aviators risking their lives in primitive machines, living a riotous social life by night. But who was the book's author? Warbirds purported to be the diary of an unknown American aviator killed in France, but some suggested the book was a fraud, a novel posing as the last words of a doomed man. One of America's leading aces from the war, Elliot White Springs of South Carolina, had arranged for the book's publication. Initially, he refused to say whose diary it was, but under pressure, Springs finally revealed that the diary was that of a pilot who'd been on patrol with Springs the day he died. A young aviator from Arkansas named John McGavick Grider. The Grider plantation on the banks of the Mississippi would be described in a memoir, Marse John Goes to War, written by Grider's adoring sister Josephine.
50 miles north of Memphis, as the crow flies, encircled on three sides by the horseshoe of the Mississippi's willow-fringed banks and white bars, Sans Souci Plantation lay dreaming in the morning haze.
Shelby Foote has a wonderful observation about planters and planters' sons and how planters were so smothering to their children that the men really didn't grow up until they were in their 50s.
When Grider's mother died, his father sent him off to Memphis to get an education, in hopes he would obtain a law degree like his father. But the young man turned wild instead.
They sent him to live with a widowed half-aunt, a shiftless sort of person who had 3 boys of her own and was certainly not endowed with much of the worldly goods or common sense either.
Many years later, Grider's wife, Marguerite, would write a brief memoir describing their life together.
He really was marvelous looking. Blonde, wavy hair, blue eyes, and the most captivating personality I have ever known. We ran away and got married by a justice of the peace. I was 14 and John was just 16.
I think they were married for something like 8 years. They were both spoiled children, and they loved each other, but it was impossible.
Ryder's forebears were members of the Southern aristocracy. Military service was a matter of family honor.
He met the news of America's declaration of war with a whoop of joy. Here was an outlet for his excess of energy, his longing for adventure.
I think Mack Ryder signed up for the war because he didn't have anywhere else to go. He went to school and he just couldn't cut the mustard. And all of a sudden, here's this avenue open to him to fly an airplane for the valor of your country.
Ryder sold some of his land to buy a house in Memphis for Marguerite and his two sons, then struck off for the war.